Am I forgetting? Said, or if you feel that you don't have the answer to something, responsibility of the next ministry, you just say that is actually under the flagship of our counterparts or something like that. You're welcome to do so. Good afternoon, Edie. Just what is wrong? Good afternoon, Namibia and the world, and welcome to a session here at the Government Information Center on the second day of the month of love. It is February 2022, the 2nd. My name is Shianwa Desire Kahiha, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. And our topic today is the celebration of the World Wetlands Day. The World Wetlands Day is celebrated annually on the 2nd of February, following its adaptation by the General Assembly on the 30th of August 2021. This is after a resolution that was co-signed by 75 member states of the United Nations. 2022 will be the first year that this day, World Wetlands Day, will be celebrated under the United Nations International Days calendar, and it is being celebrated under the theme of wetlands for people and nature. I have two panelists with me in the studio this afternoon that will be assisting me in getting or giving more information with regards to wetlands and their whereabouts in our country as Namibia. But before we do that, I would like to call on Mr. Ben Nangombe, who is the Executive Director of the Ministry of Health and Social Services. He will be giving us our COVID update for this afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Nangombe. How are you today? I am blessed. Thank you.
or rather, the sex distribution of the cases is 61 males, of which 60 are new cases, and 44 females, of which 42 are new cases. They range in age from 1 year to 101 years. The distribution of the cases is as follows. Omaheke, 75 cases at Hobabes, Ochodonjupa, 7 cases, Ochivarongo, 4, Okahanja, 3, Ohangwena, 5 cases, Enana has 4, Engela, 1, Oshikoto, 5 cases at Chumeb, Comas region, 3 cases at Venduk, Karas region, 3 cases at Luderets, Irongo region, 2 cases, 1 at Walvis Bay and Swakopmund each, Hardap region, 1 case at Rioboth, Kunene region, 1 case at Opua. We are reporting cases from 8 regions, with Omaheke region recording more cases, that is 75, amounting to 72.4% of the total reported cases, followed by Othodonjupa region with 7 cases amounting to 6.7%. Among the confirmed cases, 75. Among the confirmed cases, 78 are learners, of which 74 are from Mpe Puto Primary School in Hobabes district, and 2 are students. 1 case has received 1 dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and 3 are fully vaccinated. 101 cases are not vaccinated, accounting for 96.2% of the total confirmed cases. 98 cases from 10 regions have recovered, and the recoveries are recorded as follows. Comas region 19, Omsati 18, Kavango West 16, Karas 14, Ochodonjupa 11, Oshikoto and Kunene 7 each, Ohangwena 3, Zambezi 2, and Hardap region 1 recovered case. The number of active cases now amount to 8,111. 94 cases are hospitalized across 12 regions, except for Omaheke and Kavango West regions. 2 of the recovered cases, or 2 of the hospitalized cases have received 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccine. 7 are fully vaccinated, while 85, accounting for 90.4%, are not vaccinated. 9 cases are in ICU, and none of the cases in ICU are vaccinated. The distribution of the cases hospitalized are as follows. Omsati region 18, Comas 16, Ohangwena 12, Irongo 12, Oshana 11, Kunene 7, Oshikoto and Hardap are 4 each, Kavango East and Zambezi as well as Karas 3 each, Ochodonjupa region 1 case. We are reporting 4 deaths from 4 districts. The Oshakati district 1, Oshikuku 1, Utapi 1, and Opua 1. All 4 deaths occurred between the 26th and the 28th of January 2022. The death reported from the Opua district occurred at home. None of the deceased were vaccinated. By the 31st of January 2022, a total of 418,591 persons aged 18 years and older have received 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccine, representing 24.8% of the target population of 1.4 million. A total of 114,284 have received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, while 244,776 have received 2 doses of other vaccines. Therefore, 359,060 persons who are adults have completed the vaccination schedule, representing 24.4% of the target population. 4,090 children aged between 12 and 17 have received one dose of Pfizer vaccine, representing 1.3% of the target population of 307,298. Of these, 1,027 are fully vaccinated. Therefore, a cumulative number of persons vaccinated with the first dose of COVID-19 vaccine, both for adults and children, is 422,681, of which 360,087 are fully vaccinated, translating to 20.2% of the target population, which is about 1.7 million. 16,711 people have received the COVID-19 booster dose. By way of the national summary, the cumulative new confirmed cases, 156,044, newly confirmed cases, 102, new reinfections are 3, cumulative cases including the reinfections are therefore 158,062. The recoveries to date cumulatively 145,963, representing a recovery ratio of 93.6%. The active cases are 8,111, as I reported. The cumulative total of the first dose vaccine administered, 422,681. The second dose cumulatively, 245,803. The cumulative total vaccine completed, 360,087. COVID-19 deaths cumulative, 3,649. COVID-related deaths, 324. Total deaths are 3,973. The total samples tested for COVID-19, 924,392. Active contacts, 1,459. The cumulative number of people to have been quarantined, 86,991. Those discharged from quarantine, 86,899. And those currently in quarantine are 92. That concludes the update for this afternoon. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nangombe. That is the Executive Director in the Ministry of Health and Social Services who gave us the COVID-19 update for the 1st of February. I think the best situation that we could ever ask for is a zero increment on the death rate, and this needs our work together as a nation. Let us please adhere to the COVID-19 regulations that are in place, continuously wash our hands with running water and soap, sanitize our hands, and also disinfect our surfaces, and also importantly, let us practice social distancing. Today is the 2nd of February 2022, and as we said, today is the World Wetlands Day, and it is the first year that it is being commemorated after its adoption by the General Assembly of the United Nations on the 30th of August 2021. This is after a co-support of 75 member states decided on this. To help us discuss the topic this afternoon, we do have Ms. Ndina Nashipili, who is the Deputy Director in the Division of Water Basin Management under the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. We also have Mr. Kenneth Uisep, who is the Deputy Director of Wildlife Monitoring and Research in the Directorate of Scientific Services from the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. Good afternoon, lady and the gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To kick off our discussion this afternoon, I'd like Ms. Nashipili to please enlighten our viewers on what are wetlands.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll try to simplify the answer. Wetland is a conjunctive word which stands for wet and land. So, how does a land become wet? It should contain water. So, wetlands are areas that contain water, either permanently or seasonal. And this includes the natural wetlands as well as man-made wetlands. These are our rivers, our floodplains, our oceans, our lakes, and also our dams. It also includes the shallow coastal areas as well as estuaries. Estuaries are areas where the rivers meet the ocean. In simple terms, that's wetlands.
Okay, fair enough. It's an area that has water, whether man-made or natural. Do I have it in one sentence, as simple as possible?
Simple.
Okay. Mr. Kenneth Uisep, can you help us understand the significance of celebrating World Wetlands Day?
Thank you very much. The World Wetlands Day is a very important day. It is a day at which we are raising awareness about the importance of wetlands and associated resources and why it is important that we have to look after our wetland resources. You know, Namibia is the most arid country south of the Sahara, which means we've got water scarcities, and every drop of water counts, and it's important that public is made aware of the important roles the wetlands play in provision of water and other ecosystem services. You know, wetlands are very unique ecosystems. They support different types of biodiversity. Rural communities depend on wetlands for their livelihoods, for their water sources, to water their livestock. So these are very important, and it's just important that we raise the profile of our wetlands so that we can jointly help look after these wetland resources.
Okay, well stated. It is everybody's duty. But before we get to how we play a part or a role as a nation, we would like to know from Ms. Nashipili. Mr. Uisep now alluded to the fact that our country is a semi-arid country with very minimal rainfall. Do we have really wetlands, you know, that can maybe, if somebody sees it, can identify and say this is a wetland in the country? And if so, where are they located?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Yes, indeed, Namibia is blessed with a number of wetlands. As I said in the explanation, what is wetlands? Wetlands include rivers. Most of our communities live around near rivers. Wetlands also include oceans. Most of us can associate ourselves with oceans. It also includes our dams. Fombach Dam is not far from Windhoek. And Windhoek itself is built around a wetland. Icams, Oshomite no Sherero, which means hot spring. So it is around water. So we have a number of wetlands, as I said, and they are located all over the country.
Okay. Yes.
If I can add to that, we've got wetlands all over Namibia, especially when it rains and when water collects, that areas become wetlands. But because we are talking about the Ramsar or the International Wetlands Day, it's just important to also mention that we've got 5 Ramsar or 5 wetlands listed for Namibia as wetlands of international importance, which means these areas are not only important for Namibia and Namibians, but these are globally significant areas because they somehow contribute to the global biodiversity, mainly in the form of wetland-dependent bird species. And we've got 3 of such international wetlands along our coastline, which is the Walvis Bay Lagoon, Sandwich Harbour, and Orange River mouth. And then we've got one in Etosa National Park, the Etosa Pan. And the 5th one, and the most recently listed one, is in the lower parts of the Kavango River, which is the area falling into the Boboda National Park, which is a protected area. So those are the 3 or 5 sites that were identified to be internationally important.
Okay.
We use them to raise profile of other wetlands, which are also very important for Namibians locally.
Okay. And you referred to something you stated as Ramsar. What is Ramsar?
Okay, Ramsar is the name of the town in the country called Iran. That is where in 1971, group of concerned conservationists meet first to discuss the idea of establishing some sort of an arrangement, international arrangement, where nations can come together, work together to protect wetlands.
Okay.
You know, this meeting in 1971 was called to address the decline in the number of birds that were associated with wetlands.
Okay.
Because wetlands were disappearing, and then this also meant that the birds associated with these wetlands were also disappearing.
Okay,
So group of concerned conservationists and nations came together to try and reverse these trends. And they said, let's work together at the international level so that we can reduce the loss or rate at which we are losing these wetlands if we
Okay.
want to protect the migratory bird species.
Okay. Ms. Nashipili wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I just wanted to add that the day World Wetlands Day has been celebrated since 1997. So it's only this year that we are celebrating it as an UN day.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, this is the first year that it has been part of the United Nations list
International
of
days.
internationally recognized days.
Yes.
Okay. Definitely, this is progress where we can get to a point where new things can be brought on to try and preserve and rescue our environments and the areas in which we live and depend on. Ms. Nashipili, staying with you, are Namibians aware of the importance of wetlands and their contributions in our natural ecosystems?
Yes, I would say yes, because as Mr. Uisebrev said in his introductory remark, most of our communities derive their livelihoods from wetland resources as well as wetlands. Wetlands provide a number of goods and services that include fish that you get from rivers, from oceans when they are in floods. We also get other materials like reeds, especially people that are located along our perennial rivers and also in some riverbeds around the country. Those are materials that you can use for crafts. We also have fertile land around wetlands that you can use for agriculture, and also grazing land that is provided by those wetlands. So
Yeah.
the communities are aware of the wetlands, and they are driving their livelihood from these valuable resources.
Okay. Mr. Uiseb, this year's theme is Wetlands Action for People and Nature. Can you highlight the importance of actions that would ensure that these fascinating ecosystems are conserved, and what are some of the initiatives that are in place to support their nurturing?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very important question. You know, I can just quickly give you some statistics. Globally, we are looking at about between 1950 and now, 1970 and now, we have lost about 35% of our global wetlands. We are also losing wetlands at a rate that is 3 times faster than the rate at which we are losing our forest cover. So the decline in the status or condition of the wetlands is very rapid. That's why the theme of this today's celebration is to call for action for people in wetlands.
Yeah.
You know, we said many people depend on wetlands for their livelihoods. If we don't do active interventions to help protect these wetland resources, they will disappear. If they disappear, the livelihoods of the communities depending on these resources will also disappear. So are the wildlife associated with these wetlands that will also then disappear. So it's very important that communities joined hands with government and other stakeholders to look after these wetland resources. Like my colleague indicated, many rural Namibians appreciate the value of wetlands. They know that they depend on these resources. So, but sometimes maybe they don't have the capacity or capability or resources to then spread the message that we all have to work together to look after these resources. You know, as government, there are some legal frameworks and instruments put in place to help protect the wetlands and associated resources. I think we've got two principal legal instruments, which is the Environmental Management Act of 2007, and then also the Water Resources Management Act that is being implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. So those are like two key legal instruments that we can use to help protect the integrity of the wetland resources. But the most important thing is that those laws are mainly applicable. Of course, it's applicable throughout the country, but in a rural area, it is difficult to implement those laws. So what is therefore important is awareness raising, like we are doing now, and working closely with the local communities, working in the areas where these resources are located so that we can spread this message. And the idea why we are here today is to not only raise the profile of wetlands, because today is the wetlands International Wetlands Day, but to spread the message that every day is a wetlands day. Every day we have to look after our wetlands and their resources because we depend on these resources.
I like your last statement. Every day is a World Wetlands Day because of our dependency on these ecosystems. Ms. Nashipili, as Mr. Ncwisep earlier on alluded to, studies have also supported that statement that has shown an increased rise in the disappearance and or degradation of our wetlands. How does global warming contribute to this effect?
Thank you very much. As you have rightfully said, global wetlands are disappearing at an alarming rate, and global warming is just one of the contributing factors. How does global warming contribute to the disappearing or degradation of wetlands? Climate change is associated with the increased temperature and dry atmosphere. And what does that mean to the layman? The rainfall is becoming reduced, so we are getting less and less rain. And wetlands depends on soil moisture and the water. When you don't have enough rainfall, it means your wetlands, they are drying up. So, and global warming is caused mainly by human activities, so we have control about the declining of the wetlands. So human activities that contribute to global warming include increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere coming from our industries. So we need to reduce the emissions of carbon dioxide. We also need to reduce the rate at which we are clearing land for agriculture and urban development. And we also need to manage our land use practices that will reduce soil erosion, that will contribute to the siltation of wetlands, so the wetlands become shallow. And when wetlands become shallow, we also increase the incidence of flooding because the wetlands are no longer able to accommodate the volumetric amount of water that is coming in when you have good rain.
Okay. This brings me to my next question. Are there measures being put in place by your respective ministries to try and aid the restoration of the degraded wetlands or those that have somehow disappeared? What are those measures that are in place? And also, what ways can we scale down, really, like affirmatively, what legal ways? For example, Mr. Ncwisep earlier on mentioned a few two policies, I believe, that are in place. But are there physical actions on the grounds from ministry representatives in the regions to try and conserve the wetlands?
Yes, there is so much action being done on the ground to promote. Of course, if I can talk on behalf of our ministry, our ministry is mandated to promote sustainable use of natural resources for the benefit of current and future generations. We are also responsible for implementing the Ramsar Convention locally in Namibia. So from the Ramsar perspective, and if I say Ramsar, I'm trying to restrict myself to talking about those 5 listed Ramsar sites.
Yes.
So our Ramsar sites are, at this point, so far not degraded as such. They are still in a very healthy condition. Of course, there are a number of threats, like my colleague mentioned. Climate change is a big threat that's likely to contribute to the degradation of these wetlands. But there is a lot of efforts being made. There is, of course, most of those 5 Ramsar sites, except the Walvis Bay Lagoon, is located in the protected area network. So all the measures that are aimed at protecting the habitats and the wildlife and other natural features in these protected areas also applies to the listed Ramsar sites. So we do, through management of these protected areas, help protect these important wetlands and associated resources. Some wetlands that are not listed as international wetlands are seasonal. Most of them, we only see them when there is good rain. Maybe Ms. Ndina can also elaborate more on that. There is a process from their ministry called the Integrated Water Resources Management, where people at the basin level are brought together to work together to ensure that the water, it's focused on the water. In water, if you talk about water, you talk about wetlands. So that the water and the wetland resources are protected and that people work together for the sound management of that resource. So those are kind of measures being put in place to help protect the seasonal wetlands that are mainly inland.
Ms. Nashipili, maybe something that you can add from the perspective of the Ministry of Agriculture?
Yes, in addition to what our sister ministry is doing with regards to the implementation of the Environmental Management Act of 2007, we also do pollution control. This is to ensure that our wetlands are not polluted. We issue wastewater discharge permit where industries and water users that are generating wastewater are expected to meet certain standards before they discharge in the environment. In addition, we also do issue water abstraction permit, and this is to ensure that our wetlands, they are not drained. So we control the amount of water that is being taken from the wetlands. And as my colleagues have said, we have a program or a strategy that we are implementing that is integrated water resource management, where we are trying to bring all the stakeholders together to ensure that we manage these valuable resources sustainably, because we all depend on these resources. It does not belong to the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, or Ministry of Environment and Forest and Tourism, but belongs to the Namibian nations, and it's our duty to ensure that they are safely managed.
Okay. Well put. I think the message here that we've been hearing since we started our discussion is the fact that this is something that focuses on a national resource, something that is not just dependent on one person to take care of, but a group effort to try and make sure the sustenance of water and wetlands in the country. You are reminded, as our viewers, that you can add your voice to the discussion. We do have our telephone lines that are open for you to call in. The area code is 061, that's for the capital city. The number is 400-397. 400-397 with an area code of 061. Our social media platforms are also open for you to do the same. You can give us your comments as well as your questions if you have any for our panelists. On Facebook, we are at Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. Our handle on YouTube for our channel there is MICT Namibia. For the YouTube channel, our handle is MICT Namibia. So while we wait for our callers to call in and your comments on our social media platforms, I'd like to ask Ms. Nashipili, wetlands are well known to be biodiversity hotspots. They have the ability to store fresh water. They also have carbon sinks which automatically translate into undeniable sources of livelihood. That is one thing that science has shown us and taught us about wetlands. How can Namibia utilize wetlands to its advantage? You know, maybe to create some form of advantage with regards to socio-economic development, job creation, food production, and all these things that are linked to such.
Yes. Wetlands, as we have rightfully said, they are hotspot for biodiversity. And biodiversity refers to the group of a variety of organisms. It can be wildlife, it can be flora. And as you might recall or might be aware, a lot of economic activities are taking place around and near wetlands. Talk about tourism establishment. Most of the lodges in the country, especially those that are outside municipal areas, they are strategically located near wetlands. Can be rivers, can be dams. And this is a way that Namibia can enhance the economic socio-economic development related to wetlands by ensuring that these areas that are so important to us are protected and used wisely. Not only that we generate income from tourism, we know that is one of the major contributors to our GDP, but we can also derive economic activities by enhancing our agricultural production. That from using the water that you are getting from the wetlands, including rivers, dams, and as well as groundwater. And we all know that agriculture is one of the major contributing industry to the country's employment sector and as well as to the GDP. So it is not, the onus is within every Namibian to see how can best we use these wetlands with their natural resources to add a contributing or meaningful contribution to our socio-economic, be it a rural area, be it a town level, and also contributing to the national GDP.
Yeah. Wow. That is, it is very clear. Wetlands have advantage because basically that is what we depend on as human beings. It's not just about a structured thing like tourism where you have lodges and so on the banks of rivers, but also general agriculture that also in turn not just speaks to food security, but also to job creation. So the more we take care of these resources and areas, the more we can actually secure sustainable socio-economic solutions. And that speaks to food security and job creation. There is something that Ms. Nashipili now spoke to, that is tourism and the connection of tourism to wetlands. Now my next question to Mr. Isep would be, are there any, let's say, tourism activities that you are aware of that have been either shut down or hindered by the rate of degradation of our wetlands?
No, I'm not aware of any tourism resort that may have shut down simply because the wetlands were degraded. Our focus mainly, there may be some, but I'm just not aware because our focus from the ministry perspective is to work within those areas that are listed as internationally important wetlands. That's where our focus is. I can say that the opposite is the true, because we have, for instance, if you look at the Okavango River, if you just drive down along that river, you would find most likely maybe about 10 to 15 to 20 different tourism operations. If you go inside the protected area where the Ramsar site is, that's where you've got the beautiful big tall trees. They support almost over 400 different bird species, and those are things that really attract people to come to these wetlands. So in the case of Namibia, and with the listed wetlands or internationally important wetlands, they only add value to tourism. If you look at Orange River mouth, maybe because it's in a protected and in a restricted zone, its contribution to tourism is perhaps minimal. But if you look at the Walvis Bay Lagoon and Sandwich Harbor, you know, those wetlands are generating huge income and economic activities for the coastal towns. You know, there are on daily basis, there are tours going out to Sandwich Harbor simply to enjoy the beautiful scenery and the wildlife being supported by these wetlands. Etosa National Park is a big attraction simply because there's a big pond lying in the middle of the park. When it rains, all the waters from the north flowing from Angola ends up in Etosa Pond. It draws a lot of flamingos, and it becomes one of the important breeding areas for the flamingos. We've got two types of flamingos, the lesser flamingo and the big flamingo. So these birds only bred in this area. So it becomes a tourism attraction. People want to see these wonders of nature. And people visit Etosa, they pay park entrance fees. This money is generated for the country. It goes to the Treasury. Treasury uses these resources in social programs, contributing to education, health, and so on and so forth. So indirectly, if we look after these wetlands and if they are maintained in good condition, they continue to provide their normal service. Tourists would come to view these wetlands and associated resources, and we only generate the revenue out of that.
Okay. So we do hope that none of these tourism establishment, or maybe also just general livelihoods, have really been destroyed to such a level that they had to shut down or people had to move because of poor management of wetlands in those areas. And speaking of maintenance and so on, Ms. Nashipili, earlier on you alluded to flood connections. Being connected, flood control or so on, being connected to wetland areas. Now we would like to know, what are the major roles as a natural-based solution do wetlands have with regard to the reduction of the impact of floods, especially now that we are looking at a season or a time period where we're receiving a lot of rain and many areas in the country have reported flooding incidences?
Thank you very much. Before I answer that question, I just want to inform the public that Etosha National Park is Etosha Pen is one of the only 2 breeding sites in Southern Africa for the lesser flamingo. And that really requires intensified effort to make sure that these wetlands continue to provide that services to the biodiversity. Yes, but to come back to the question, how does wetlands contribute to the control of floods? I would like the viewers to visualize the oceans or the floodplains associated with the Okavango River, the Zambezi River, and Orange River. You find at the bank of the river, there's this huge tract of land which is flat. So when the water is flowing, the water spread all over this area. So in the way, the wetlands with their floodplains act as buffer zones to slow down the water by spreading water over a large area. But if we now encroach in this floodplain, we are reducing the area that is available to the water to be accommodated. So we need to as much as land is in high demand, we need to put proper planning in place to ensure that our wetlands are not degraded, but are not reduced,
Yeah.
so that we give them space.
Yeah.
I know in some countries they have created what they call space for rivers. So that is just to ensure that the incident of floods are minimized. So maybe we can also apply something similar, that we make space available for the water to move through and not destroying our properties, and to some extent lives being lost.
So basically, it goes back to, in some areas, encroachment into the areas that had naturally been developed by, whether it's an act of God, to create that relief for flooding. So maybe also where we position ourselves in the environment as human beings can also play a role on some of these impacts of flooding. Yes, there are some, obviously, when we have extreme water, dispensation from rainfalls, but then you have others, as Ms. Nashipili now is explaining, that sometimes it's a cause of where we settle ourselves. So town developers maybe also can assist with that regard. We are reminded, or we do remind you, our viewers, that our lines are open. You can join the conversation this afternoon. We are looking at the World Wetlands Day. It's the International World Wetlands Day. It was, or it is the first year that it is being celebrated after it was adopted by the General Assembly on the 30th of August 2021. So this is the first time, and the theme under which it's being celebrated this year, it's Wetlands Action for People and Nature. Our line that you can use to call us with or call is 061, that is the area code. The number is 400-397. The number is 400-397. We also have our social media platforms that you can utilize to, communicate with us. And on Facebook, we are at the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. And on YouTube, our handle there is MICT Namibia. Do we have comments from our social media? Let's have a look here. Okay, I think we're having a glitch there. But anyway, we'll get back to your comments. Please be patient with us. We will hear what you have to say from those platforms. We would like to know whether there are any wetlands. Mr. Wisep, maybe you can assist us. Are there any wetland areas that we could say that these were established or man-made, maybe in the country? Are there such areas?
Yes, like my colleague explained in her definition of what a wetland is, she talked about the natural as well as artificial wetlands. So in most parts of Namibia, we've got what is a man-made, what we can call a man-made artificial wetlands. A sewage pond, for instance, is an wetland. If you go to the back of Windhoek, Koreangap Dam, where they've got the water reclamation work, where they are trying to recycle water for supply to citizens of Windhoek or residents of Windhoek. That area is also an important wetland from the perspective of the bird life that it supports. So it's an artificial man-made environment, but it supports bird life.
Okay.
If you look at places like the Hardap Dam, the new Neckartal Dam, all the big reservoirs or big dams, Swakoppoort, for instance, those are all artificial wetlands that are created by men. In some places, if you go to a sewage pond, for instance, from a layman's perspective, somebody will feel that this is just a wasteland where there
and
is...
it can't be defined as a wasteland.
But then there are big trees growing there. Those trees support bird life and other biodiversity. So from that perspective, these artificial wetlands are also very important. If you go...
sorry, we need to cut there because we've got a caller on the line. Mr. Martin from Andangwa, thank you very much for joining us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, how are you this afternoon?
Very well, thank you. I have been listening to the discussion.
Yes,
It's such a wonderful discussion.
thank you.
So I would love to thank the presenter for bringing this on. One of the statements that really catch my attention is the one that says each day should be, a wetland day.
Very much, yes.
And for me, I am an educator as well. But one of the challenges that I see in Namibia is that if we are to pass the message faster, we should at least, try to buy in terms of educating our young children, because I believe the youth are the future. I believe the richest that Namibia has is her own children. And our teachers, in schools, they really have little understanding of this kind of discussion. Although there are some of the career subjects in schools which carries this information, now the teachers are not well equipped with the information. So at some point, they cannot even explain it as it is explained. Now, my question is, are there perhaps some developed learning support materials, could it be video, pamphlet, or anything, which to some extent could be sent to schools, to create awareness, and then we can take it from there. I believe this can really assist.
No,
And
Mr.
then
Martin.
also, perhaps in the future, we can
Yes.
also, if possible, as a nation, maybe as a ministry from where the colleagues are coming from, organize some sort of competition where schools could participate.
Very good initiatives there, Mr. Martin. I'm sure that is a different angle that can be utilized to try and strengthen and support the restoration and the maintenance of our wetlands. Thank you very much for your participation. It is highly appreciated. And I will post this to our panelists. Both of them maybe can give us some form of hints of what is being done from their ministries currently and how maybe they can also do it for the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
You're welcome.
And before I give it over to the panelists to make comments on what Mr. Martin had to say from an educator's perspective, we have a comment from our social media platform, that is from our YouTube channel, Mr. Richard Kambinda, who is saying or asking, how are professionals such as architects and urban planners helping to preserve wetlands and other natural formations? How are professionals such as architects and urban planners helping to preserve wetlands and other natural formations? Mr. Richard Kambinda, thank you very much. I think I will post both of these to our panelists to, in short, just give us their perspective on Mr. Martin's question as well as Mr. Richard's question in short from each respective ministry's perspective. Ms. Nashipili?
Yes, Martin, thank you very much for that valuable contribution. Yes, we have in the past developed awareness materials that were targeting specifically school children. That were books on titled Caring for Water and another one on water pollution. We also had a poster specifically designed to describe wetlands and how we can protect those wetlands. Unfortunately, at this moment, the poster is out of stock, but the books we still have, and those we distribute to schools. And with regard to the school competition, yes, every year when we are holding this commemoration, we do involve schools. And we also include school competition, and we are hoping to have something similar during the commemoration that is coming up. I'm sure we're going to give details later on in the program before we round off. So again, we appreciate your contribution.
Okay. And maybe Mr. Kambinda's...
Yes. And with regards to Mr. Kambinda, the question, how can urban planners and architects can contribute to the protection of wetlands? We hope or we are hoping that when the towns have been planned, consultations are made with the relevant ministries. This is to identify sensitive areas and also to highlight the flood lines. Even though it's not always that we get heavy rains, we have those 1 in 50 years, 1 in 100 years. And mind you, water always knows its path. Even if it doesn't rain, it did not flow for the past 50 years, it doesn't mean it will not come back. So we are appealing with our counterparts from the local authorities to always consult, to engage us, to just to discuss and look at their proposed development plans.
Okay. Mr. Bishop?
Yes, I also want to add on to the comments made by the first caller. We've got what is called the Environmental Education unit within the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. It's not just focused on wetland issues, it's trying to cover broad environmental issues, and it's aimed at raising environmental awareness with young people, mainly. Linked to that, we've got also about 4 or 5 environmental education centers, and these centers are open for any school groups to visit and to learn more about environmental issues, wildlife, tourism, and so on and so forth. Schools can be a very important tool and a platform that can be used to raise environmental awareness. And I'm thinking at each and every school, secondary school, there are teachers teaching subjects like biology, life sciences, geography. And I think those are teachers that are equipped to help set up these environmental clubs at their schools and to use those platforms to help create awareness about environmental issues. You know, we are faced with so many environmental challenges, and we need a nation, a society that is environmentally conscious if we want to have a sustainable development, a concept that we always sometimes misuse. If we want to have sustainable development in Namibia, we have to start with very young children at a very young age. On the second issue, on the Facebook comment, our ministry is also responsible for this environmental impact assessment, a process that each and every developer has to follow if they want to develop something. And the idea behind that process is to identify environmental impacts, negative ones, including negative impacts on the wetland resources, and then try and come up with mitigation measures or management measures to reduce those negative impacts. So that is one aspect that can be considered in urban development. With the architects, I think there is what they call the sustainable building concept, and it's not just about the building itself, but also the environment in which such a building is made. You know, we can look at in Windhoek many years ago, people would cut down big old established trees to just make way for buildings. Nowadays, it's not happening because people are aware about the role these specific trees play, that these are maybe 100, 200 years old trees. So people build around these buildings, or I mean trees, they integrate them in their architectural design, because you also just like to have a tree or some green environment around your place of work. It just make it a fun place to work.
Very much.
Yeah.
It actually enhances the landscape. They call it landscaping.
Yes.
And I must say, a place with no trees, it ain't pretty at all. Grey pavement is not a place that you would want to have. So it is quite clear. Start small. Martin, you brought a very good point to the table. Start with small children. And I think if we do have educators who are interested in trying to enhance, this awareness, they can surely approach the respective ministries to try and ask for assistance and guidance on how they can do so. We are running out of time, but before we round off, we would like to just grab a quick comment or input from our social media platform. That is Mr. Richard Kambinda would like to have a follow-up or has a follow-up question. What's the significance of environmental impact assessments in preserving wetlands? What's the significance of environmental impact assessments in preserving wetlands? Thank you very much, Mr. Richard Kambinda. I will give this one to Ms. Nashipili, and that will be also the point where she could let us know, where will the UN's Wetlands Day celebration be taking place globally this year? And on what platforms? Are there webinar links or, conferences and so on? And also, with regards to Namibia, where are these celebrations taking place?
Thank you very much. To come back to what Richard had posted on Facebook, environmental impact assessment, as my colleague had alluded to, is aimed at identifying possible environmental impacts. And why you need to identify those impacts is to try and mitigate those impacts. So the EIAs tries to identify what are wetland-associated impact that specific development is likely to cause, and if there's such impact, how can the developer or the proponent mitigate those impacts by developing what we call environmental management plan, which then is enforced by the Ministry of Environment, the Forest and Tourism to ensure that they are complied with. Is to come back to the last two questions. The first one, where in the National World Wetlands Day is going to be celebrated. As we said, this is an international day. It is celebrated all over the world, but the one highlight is the virtual walk or run for action for wetlands that is taking place today. Coming back home, what are we planning in Namibia to commemorate World Wetlands Day? We are commemorating World Wetlands Day jointly with World Water Day, which is commemorated every year on the 22nd of March.
Okay.
So in Namibia, we are planning to have a National Water Week, which will run from the 28th of March to the 1st of April.
Okay.
And we selected these dates to accommodate our independence celebration. We don't want to be associated by the independence celebration, and also to accommodate the World Water Forum that is going to take place in Senegal, Dakar, the first one to be held in the African continent. From the 21st to the 25th of March.
Okay.
So we'll provide more detail as we go on, as to the venue, but we plan to have several celebrations around the country. We don't want this to be a Windhoek-based. Wetlands are all over, and water is everyone's commodity.
Okay. As we heard it from Ms. Nashipili, accompanied by Mr. Ngwisep, that it is a national commodity, something that everybody has to play their part in making sure that we protect, maintain, and take care of it. Our sustainability depends on wetlands, whether artificial or naturally made. There is definitely a bucket full of activities that will be held in the coming months, and we will be awaiting for that information from our respective ministries. But for today's topic, International World Wetlands Day, we would like to thank you for taking part in the conversation, for tuning in to listen to our panelists. We would also like to say thank you for them for availing their time to be with us. From myself, Shianwa Desire Kahiha, and the production crew here at the Government Information Center, goodbye.